Hello, everyone. I am João Borges. I am the Conference President Chair at the International Younger Chemists Network. And today we'll be having this very exciting session and webinar on science outreach in scope of the professional development skills workshop series that we are organizing at the IYCN. So before going into the program, let me thank you very much for joining this webinar and for supporting the activities organized by the network. And a special thanks to all the speakers that kindly agreed to speak and share their expertise within the science outreach activities they have been organized and participating in the course of their careers. As you can see in the slide, so we have three speakers coming from across the world. So we have Dr. Amanda Bongers from Canada, Dr. Omayra Padilla De Jesús from US, as well as Stephanie Chan that is connecting with us from Malaysia. So before going into the importance of this workshop and what, of course, we'll be talking about, let me just introduce briefly the program. So in this case, so we'll be starting talking about the outreaching activities in the scope of the activities that Dr. Amanda Bongers has been involved at Canada. Then we'll have Dr. Omayra and then Dr. Stephanie Chan. And of course, we'll not have questions during or after the talks, but we'll be holding them for the panel discussion right after the end of the talks. We'll have 30 minutes for that. So any questions that you have for the speakers, please post them in the chat box and send them to organizers only. So you can start doing so, because we'll be reading them out during the panel discussion and inquiring the speakers based on what you want to ask them. So before going into the webinar itself, let me just introduce the network for those of you that are not familiar or do not know how to join. So we are an associated organization of IUPAC since 2017. And here you can see the vision and mission of our network. So our vision is to connect and empower younger chemists at a global level. And our mission is to support and advocate all younger chemists working across the chemical science towards a globally sustainable future. So how can you join the network? So you can check this website, iycnglobal.com/membership, in which you can see what is required for you to be eligible to join the network. Briefly, if you are doing your master, bachelor, master, or PhD studies across chemical science, you are eligible to become a member and part of the network, and then you can join one or more of the teams that we have within the network. Moreover, if you are younger than 35, you can become a member as well. And also, if you are older than 35, you can still become a member if you have finished, for instance, your postdoc training within the past 5 years. So if you go to this membership form, this website, you will see what is needed. It's quite easy. In any case, if you have any doubts, please connect with us. We have here the email address as well as the social media accounts in which we post about the different events in which we are organizing, as well as other activities that are of interest to younger chemists. So going into the webinar itself, so I am very pleased to introduce you the first speaker, that is Dr. Amanda Bongers. Dr. Amanda earned a bachelor in biochemistry from the University from the University of Waterloo in Canada in 2011, and received a PhD in organic chemistry from the University of Ottawa in Canada as well in 2016. Since then, she did a postdoc, and currently she is an assistant professor at Queen's University in Canada and leads the chemistry education research group. Amanda, as we'll see, is very highly involved in science outreach activities, implementing programs for budding scientists and non-scientists, she is really devoted to promoting science outreach within a research group. In fact, she teaches a graduate course that helps students developing skills in science communication and outreach. And it is illustrated here behind the goals of attracting more people into science outreach and research activities. She aims at reforming the science and academia to create a more inclusive and equitable space. So with this, I would be pleased if Amanda, you could please go ahead by sharing your screen.
All right, thank you, Yao. I'm so happy to be here today, and I think this network is just fantastic. Okay. How does that look?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, should I keep my screen on while I present, or should I turn my screen off? Does it matter? Okay. So, thanks everyone for showing up. It's early morning for me, but I know that we have attendees from all over the place. And I'm going to tell you a bit about some of the outreach I do and some of my philosophy around outreach. I think one of the most important things with outreach is, or at least for me, is to find your audience. It's really challenging, as I'll talk about, to try and do outreach for everyone. So I'll give you first a bit of a background about myself. As Yao said, I am an assistant professor in the Department of Chemistry. Queen's University is in Kingston, Ontario, Canada. And we're right here on Lake Ontario. It's a lovely town. And yeah, I lead this chemistry education research group. So chemistry education research is kind of a growing field in Canada. And you know what we do, it's very interdisciplinary. There's a lot of ways to approach how to study chemistry education. And what my team does is we use a couple different strategies. We try and do kind of overall curriculum development, and we use some tools from cognitive science to try and study learning at that fundamental level. Try and look at the kind of basic mechanisms of how we encode information, and hopefully use that and transfer it into teaching tools, teaching practices. So right now, I started only in 2019. So we're still getting our research group going. I teach first year chemistry right now, and also that graduate course. It's on principles of scientific communication. And a big part of that is, for me, is outreach and also science communication. So just a quick snapshot from my research group webpage to show you some of the students I'm currently working with. Feng is my new graduate student. She's doing fantastic. And I also work with some amazing undergraduate researchers. And just a quick look here at our, we have this chemistry learning lab. So we still have a lab space, even though we don't do wet lab activities. We're still kind of setting it up there, but we have our interview lounge with all the kind of AV equipment you would need to do research interviews. We have an eye tracking instrument, which is a lot of fun. I'm setting up a virtual reality zone because we have a VR headset that does eye tracking. And hopefully we'll be getting some brain scanning gear because I'm really interested in kind of the neural signals that relate to learning. And these are just a couple over here screenshots of our chemistry building at Queen's University. Okay, so let's get into outreach now. And like I said, I'll tell you a bit about my philosophy with outreach. And it's really that you need to build a relationship. Outreach isn't about just telling people about science or communicating and explaining. Some of that falls more under science communication or SciComm. But I think of outreach as needing to start a conversation and not treating the your audience like you're kind of doing them a favor, but trying to bring them in and build a bridge. And a lot of outreach is geared towards what you'll see called the general public or the public. And when I was teaching my course, I kind of challenged my students to say, well, who is this? Who are the general public? And because really that term can refer to anyone. And it's important to keep in mind that that's not a homogenous group. So you have to think about in both SciComm and outreach, who is your audience? Where do they live? What's their daily experience with the topic? Are they children? Are they teenagers? Are they adults? You can do outreach towards all different ages and all different audiences. And what's their profession? So when I'm trying to do some outreach related to my research, I can target some of it towards teachers, because if I'm trying to get them involved in education research or seeing the benefits of what people call the scholarship of teaching and learning, then I want to target it towards them. And really, once you have a clear picture of your audience, it is a lot easier to tailor these outreach efforts. So you can, one of the most important parts actually is like identifying the level of detail, and also is your audience already going to be familiar with, or what terms might be confusing to them, or activities based on just the colloquial meanings of those terms. So there's a lot of things like that. And I want to show you this quick video of Science Rendezvous, which is so the text is a bit cut off there, but I'll just show you here. It's this annual free family festival that occurs in Canada. And it's across, these are just all the cities. So you can see Canada is a very big country, and this festival has sites all over. It was canceled in 2020, but it's going virtual in 2021. So one of the great things about this festival is that the research institutes kind of open up and have open houses. And we actually take science out into the streets. The main goal is being to promote science to the general public again. So it's really a science festival for everyone. Now, I'll just show you a brief clip of what this looks like. You won't hear the sound, but just so you have a bit of an idea. So a lot of activities targeted towards children. There's also things for all ages. So you see we take microscopes out into the street, child using a pipette. So these events are excellent, and but they're a huge undertaking because the audience is everyone. Another example of kind of this broad outreach effort is the Canada-wide Science Fair that we have. So I was a judge in the Science Fair last year, and I hope to continue doing it because it's just a fantastic kind of celebration of these young scientists, children from all across Canada come out and show what they've been doing. And you see a huge range, and often the type of research question they approached for their project really is tied in with their culture. Okay, so I wanted to do a really quick poll. I'm not sure how well this will work, but I put a little short link up here. And if you want to hop in and to that link and just answer these questions. So what target audiences are you interested in building relationships with? What types of outreach activities are you interested in? I have the results up here. I'm not sure if everyone will have a chance to get into it. I'll put up the link again. So it's up here. maybe that's something we can go back to later after people have a chance. Okay. Okay, so targeted audiences. I'm going to give you some examples of the type of outreach that I do and what the targeted audience is. And the first one would be, I do some outreach to first-year students in science, and who I call budding scientists. So I am a first-generation university student, and I remember just starting in university and being totally overwhelmed and not knowing how it all worked. So I can really try and help students with a similar background there navigate if they're interested in doing research. I remember not knowing what TAs were. I thought their sole job was to just, grade my reports, and not realizing they were also researchers at the university doing graduate school. So I try and do events related to this type of outreach. I focus on storytelling, kind of meet your prof events, and I try and be active in some mentorship programs as well. The other type of outreach, which I just say to non-scientists, but this isn't just trying to teach non-scientists about science. I try and build relationships. So one of the projects I'm currently working on is getting an artist in residence program going in our Department of Chemistry, because I can just imagine how much we can learn from an artist who has a totally different view on research and on knowledge. And I also have some projects in decolonization of higher education, which the kind of disciplines that we think of as like science, physics, biology, chemistry, they're a colonial kind of construct in a lot of ways. So in this decolonization work that I'm doing, I have to work with a lot of other people, including non-scientists, to try and look at other ways of knowing. So lastly, and one of the things I'm going to focus on is this outreach for decision makers. So go back here. So who are decision makers? Well, often they're people in government, policymakers. And I volunteer for an organization, I should say, called Evidence for Democracy. I've never been kind of officially part of their leadership team, but I love what they do, so I want to talk about them, and I volunteer for them as much as I can. So their goal is to build relationships between scientists and government decision makers, and they do a lot of outreach to kind of train people to help communicate and their science to people that are making decisions. So the goal is that promoting transparent use of evidence by the government is good for the country. Okay, so this nonprofit organization, Evidence for Democracy, started with this Death of Evidence rally. So I was in my first year of my PhD in Ottawa, which is Canada's capital. And they had this massive rally, which was this march towards Parliament. And they called it the Death of Evidence because at the time the government was seen as muzzling its scientists and purposely trying to not listen to what they were trying to say about, no, we need policy that can help us with tackling climate change. We need policy for this and that. And a lot of people viewed the government as focusing more on ideology than the science. So this Death of Evidence rally, I attended it, and it was fantastic, and it really started to make a difference. So Evidence for Democracy has a few different types of outreach that they do. One of them being issue-based campaigns. So maybe the most recent and one of the most successful ones was called Safeguarding Science Advice in Canada. And we had a chief science advisor that was appointed by our prime minister a few years ago, but the term was set to expire. So their chief science advisor, I have a picture of her here, Dr. Mona Niemer. I actually, she was on stage with me when I got my PhD, and I got to shake her hand. So that was a real honor. And Evidence for Democracy did a widespread campaign where they asked people to sign an open letter and basically push their government that we need to reappoint our chief science advisor, and we need to expand their mandate and formalize this position in legislation. So it's not just something that is set to expire and we have to worry, you know. This position is really important for having a single point on science advice in Canada, and Dr. Muna Niemer is perfect for that. So I'm getting close to the end here. Evidence for Democracy, also the other type of outreach they do is education and training. So they provide all sorts of training and tools for scientists to help them better engage in outreach with the government officials. So they have all sorts of free webinars available. If you go to their website, which looks like I don't have the URL here, I have some links, but if you just search Evidence for Democracy, you can find their webinars. So I have a few of them, here. They have Connecting with Your Political Representatives, Science Policy 101, How to Write a Briefing Note. So briefing notes are really important tools for decision-making in government. And as a scientist, you can write one. And then Uncovering Misinformation. So they've recently made this annotated bibliography of online misinformation. It's excellent. And it's really just like giving scientists the tools they need to then go on and do outreach. So lastly, I know I'm kind of out of time, but I really want to quickly touch on that. I think EDII efforts need to balance outreach. And this is because doing outreach and trying to get more and more people into science is not a good strategy on its own, because we need to also make sure that when they come into science, if they're coming into academia, for example, that they're coming into a space where they're going to be safe and they're going to be treated fairly. And there's still a lot of issues with this in Canada. I think a lot of people just focused on gender diversity, and if you reach gender parity, then oh great, we're fine, but that is not the case. So I'm really passionate about kind of improving academic research spaces, at least, to be more inclusive, diverse, equitable. So I helped our students in our Department of Chemistry start their own member resource group, which they called IDEAS, which is a fantastic acronym here. And they're doing all sorts of outreach initiatives to try and improve the environment of our department. So that's all from me. Thank you so much. And I look forward to the panel afterwards.
Thank you very much, Amanda, for this great talk and for sharing the activities in which you have been involved on science outreach. We have already some questions, but as I mentioned, so we'll be directing all of them during the panel discussion at the end. So please continue posting your questions in the chat by sending them to the organizers only. So now we'll be presenting the next speaker of this webinar, that is Omayra Padilla De Jesús. Omayra graduated in chemistry from the University of Puerto Rico in 1998 and received their PhD in organic and polymer chemistry from University of California at Berkeley in 2003. Then she took a role as project leader for GE healthcare programs and initiated the INSPIRE program in 2009. Currently, Omayra is the executive director and founder of the Rise High Inc. Company. The company was founded in 2017, which is a STEM program that serves under-resourced youth with programming that is designed to exercise problem solving and critical thinking. Omayra has been involved as well in other roles. She serves as the chair of the board of directors and distribution committee of the Schenectady Foundation. She's the vice chair of the board of trustees, and she is member of the advisory board of Clarkson University Master in Arts of Teaching program. So she is really also very highly involved in these science outreach activities towards engaging with the general public. And with that, I'm very pleased to hand over to Omayra. Omayra, please, when you are ready.
Thank you, João. So are you already giving me the sharing ability? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Just 1 minute.
So
yeah, now you should be able.
Okay, show my screen. Can you see that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. It's nice to be joining, in my case, the morning time with a group of talented chemists and scientists in general, especially if you are interested in the concept of outreach. Something that I want to share a little bit about myself first. Yeah, I got all that stuff, degrees, whatever, but I'm a first generation college student as well. Both of my parents have up to 8th grade education. I'm originally from Puerto Rico. So there's a series of barriers also that I had to deal with. It wasn't as easy. However, I consider myself extremely blessed and lucky because along the way, I was always that very curious child. I could see how I could have never got into science. But I was always somehow connecting with opportunities, and my mom was a big part of this, always looking for those opportunities that would connect me to have a more structured experience that would keep me focused. And one thing opened the doors to the other, and to the other, and to the other. And so this is why I feel so strongly about outreach, because I fully understand in my own experience the impact that outreach can have. So I just want to talk about what even outreach means, and I'll share what it means for me, because it can mean different things for different people, and there are different ways of doing so, okay, because there are different goals along the way. But to me, outreach is a two-part word. When I started working for GE, and even before when I was a college student, I was always involved in all these outreach programs. But you know, I was a little bit concerned, knowing of my own experience, about the long-term impact. There's so much value on different formats of outreach, but each format has its own intended goal. So when you're thinking of outreach, you have to think about, what is my goal? Is it to create curiosity for one day and get them excited? Or is it something more along the lines of long-term? So I started feeling stronger and stronger about the need for opportunities that were more focused on the long-term impact as opposed to the one-time interaction. So when we talk about outreach, there's the out part. And you know, we are all technical and analytical to a certain extent. So we think, okay, so what are the concepts that we want to share? What are the activities we want to have? We want to make sure it's a super cool and exciting day. And they get to touch, and they get to do, and they get to make slime, and they bring it home, and the parents get upset when it gets on the sofa. Whatever the activity is, or the number of students we want to reach, the more the better. So I saw a lot of that on the outreach, a lot of the out. What is that output? But again, I was a little bit concerned about the other part of that word, the reach. Are we actually connecting with the people? Are we actually doing something impactful enough that they will take that with them and will change the course of decisions that they make every day? So that's the reach part. So I decided to focus a little bit more on reach. When I was working for GE, I was a senior scientist there. It was a new community for me. I'm originally from Puerto Rico. I went to California, and then I went to upstate New York, which is very cold, very close to Canada, just 3 hours away from Canada. And I was in a community that was well off. It was mostly all the scientists, mostly everyone was a PhD there. It was a global headquarters of research. And as I got to know more about the community, I learned that just 3 miles down the road, there was what was called Schenectady City. Completely different story. Just 3 miles down the road, there was really a wall that was invisible, but that wall was there. In the community where I was sitting at GE, it was the kids of my scientist friends, okay? Graduation rate of the high school was close to 100%. They were going to college. The number of students that were financially hurting, it was like 15%, something like that. But then down the road, number one, the school district had more than twice as many students, and the financial need of those families were in the 80-something%, and the graduation rate was not even reaching 60%. And to me, that was shocking. As someone that came from outside, just going down the road, it was a completely different world. And those kids did not even know that we existed, a global headquarters of research. They did not, it existed just a few miles down the road. So that's when I decided to create Inspire NGE. And there's so much that I learned about these kids. And the first thing that I learned was, and which I kind of knew from my own experience, they are extremely smart, super smart. They just need the opportunities. So that's when I started thinking along the lines of how can we create opportunities that can be more impactful long term. But before that, you have to understand your community. I had my own experience, and a mistake that I commonly find when people are trying to help a group is they come with their own preconceived notions of what reality is. You cannot do that. Of course, you bring lots of value with your own experience. There's so much from my own experience that I'm using right now, but you have to hit the reset button and think about, wait, what is different in this community that I've never experienced, that I don't know of? So this is just a quick picture of the community I was helping. 20% of the families are under poverty, which is about 50% of the minors. About half of the families are single parent homes, but most of the people in poverty are actually women 24 to 34. Who are those women? Those are the single moms with most of the kids. They have multiple jobs. There's the reality of many students that don't even go to school because they're taking care. They need to help take care of their elders and other family members like grandpa, grandma that are living there, and younger siblings. And something that was new for me, but we cannot take for granted, and I'm sure Andrea knows this, you're in Canada, is we have winters. You know, that's important. Why is that important? Because winters get really cold, okay? And how do you transport when it's winter, when it's sub-zero temperatures, when you have little children on a stroller and your kid is sick and you have to go to the store, but the sidewalks are not plowed, and then you have to walk under freezing rain on the road at dark with minors where the cars are driving? Okay, so these are things that we have to take into consideration and then have a better understanding of who we're trying to help. So for Rise High, long story short, after Inspire, I realized I wanted to do more in the community, and Rise High started. It took a lot more steps to that, but I only have a few minutes. So 4 pillars that I identified that I thought were really important and key to provide that long-term impact. One of them, there's the learning part. And I know we talk a lot about the learning. Okay, let's do this, let's make it fun. We believe strongly on experiential learning, but experiential learning, it's not, and it should not be about kind of a daycare center. And what do I mean by that? It's not just about entertaining you. It's about creating a program that, in fact, is not only presenting a concept, but that we actually get the kids through the process of being able to explore, to fail. Kids nowadays don't like to fail. Well, you have to fail. If you're going to be a scientist, that will also build grit, and it's going to make you, the chances of being successful are going to be higher. Okay, give them the ability to actually just dream, create, solve a problem, and apply those concepts for actual real learning. Okay, but it also has to connect. It has to connect. Science is too often, more often than not, taught completely out of context. It means absolutely nothing. I'm a chemist myself, and let me tell you, I cannot care any less about why or how much it takes for an electron to jump from point A to point B. I don't care. What I care about is how can I use that as a tool to actually solve real world problems. So that's the way it's presented. It's presented in the context of a real world problem so that they can see that it matters. That's how you can actually inspire them to do something so much bigger than themselves. We are very focused on making sure we develop those problem-solving skills, professional, personal skills as well, but having fun while learning. The continuity concept. For what I was trying to achieve, I didn't want the one-time experience. We lose a lot of kids. Every kid is a scientist when they're in elementary school, and they go through middle school and starts going down, especially with girls, and high school, too late. Okay, so we wanted to make sure we could provide that continuity, especially through the most difficult times in the life of that student. And I am not here to force anyone into science, and I think that's a common mistake. Oh, everyone has to be an engineer. In fact, STEM, that's a big E. Well, there's a lot more to science than engineering, and that's one of the mistakes that I find also. But it is about, look at all the things that you can do in science. If you have the aptitude and if you have the attitude, and you're a smart kid that loves learning and solving problems, you're in. In fact, in the recruitment process, we don't even ask for grades. What we ask the teachers is about actually that aptitude and attitude for discovery and learning, because that's all it matters to us. You're a scientist by definition at that point. The other one is mentorship. And the mentorship, that's another one that that term is used so much. Oh, you want to be a mentor, you want to be a mentor. You showed up, you came for one day for 20 minutes and you're gone and I never see you again. No. When we recruit the mentors, we ask them this is going to be a longer term commitment. We started back in 2017 with students in 2018. We started with 6th graders, our 6th grade group. They're now 9th graders, and they have the same group of mentors and a few people that have moved out and so on. And there's a little bit, new people. But the idea is that they get to build relationships and a social capital that otherwise they do not have, because most likely they're going to be the first generation college student, and they don't have a close nearby network that are going to tell them, okay, Dan, this is what you need to do. No, they don't have that. So that's the value of mentorship. And the cohort experience. We are bringing kids that are from the whole city, different schools. They have common goals, common interests, and that's really important, because especially in their district, they're surrounded by too many kids that cannot care less, and that is really sad. But they need to have that group of peers that actually care and that they can learn together and continue those relationships together. So the idea is that we create a cohort, and that cohort keeps on growing with us through the years together. In order to be effective, you also have to understand what the barriers are in that community. Our program is free of charge. I showed some of the statistics, so that's kind of obvious. But another one that is very much underestimated is the fact that these kids don't have these opportunities at walking distance. There are opportunities in the capital district where I am, but what would be a 15-minute ride in a car with someone that has a car, it would take them at least an hour if they were trying to take public transportation. And again, remember, we have winters, not nearly as easy. So they cannot really logistically participate in these programs. These families have a lot on their hands, and they cannot be taking care of all the logistics of, I'm going to drop you off and pick you up. If you're from the middle class, you're probably used, I don't know how many of you are parents, it's like, all of a sudden you become the chauffeur. I have to take them to football and soccer and whatever. No, most of these families cannot do that. They cannot afford it, but they cannot even take care of those logistics. So we decided to provide transportation. Again, understanding the barriers, and that's how can we make sure that we get them safely to wherever they need to go. And that's been a big part of our success. The other one is morning snacks and lunch. We spend every Saturday throughout the academic year, we spend 3 hours. That's a long time. These kids are on a bus, it adds time and so on. It is such a relief and such a help for that family that they know that that kid of themselves is not wasting time, is not on the streets, which is probably not very safe. They're actually learning, they're in a safe space, and they're also provided with a meal. Number one, they need to focus and learn. A hungry kid cannot do that. So we provide a morning snack, and then before they leave, we provide lunch. That's one less thing to worry for these families. Something that people also underestimate, and it's not just about transportation, it's not about assets, things that you can buy, but it is actually communication. Communication is a huge barrier when you're working with under-resourced communities. People that don't understand, they say, well, why don't you send an email to all the parents? And I laugh. It's like, email? Many of these parents don't have email, and they don't even, if they do, they don't even check their email. That's not how it's going to work. So I have to identify what all the different channels of communication are. I have to use them all, because otherwise I'm going to be missing someone. And so far, the best communication tool is actually snail mail. We're still sending letters, but I know who are the people that work best at different ways of communicating. We have different apps, we have text, and depending on the family, I know what the best means of communication is to get a hold of them. And last but not least, trust. It takes a lot of time to build the trust, and in order to build the trust, it's going to take time and it's going to take consistency. The community that we serve are tired, exhausted of being told that they're not good parents, that they can do better, that whatever is their fault. We're not here to do that. We're here to say, we're here to help you, and we really mean it. What can we do to help you? So that trust is really key in order to be effective. So the other key aspect of our program that has been a great success, and this is an old picture, this is pre-COVID, we actually have 60 students right now, is the power of interdisciplinary collaboration. And maybe you've heard this, oh, I'm a scientist, I'm going to teach them all these great things, but the vocabulary that you use, everything just goes whoops, it doesn't go anywhere. So what we do, we collaborate very closely also with people who are actual educators. They don't have the know-how, they don't have the expertise, they don't have the career knowledge about what you need to do, et cetera, to follow a certain path, but they understand how kids learn. So we match them with our professionals. Let's say next week, this coming Saturday, we start a 3-week module on architecture. These are the people from the best engineering school in the area, the School of Architecture in the area. They have created this amazing program, but they've been working together. They bring the passion, they bring the context, they can answer the questions about career, and then we put the two together, and the product is absolutely amazing. Look in your community. There are going to be lots of resources. You just want to bring them together and identify what the strengths of each of those are, and then create something great together. So that's really what I mean by reach. You want to connect, you want to be effective, you want to sustain. I want long impact. That's what I want. I don't want to lose these kids. I want to get them, and I want to keep them. So outreach is a compound word. It's not just the out, but think about the reach. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Omayra, for sharing such great talk and inspiring initiatives in which you have been involved and organizing as well. Again, please, I remind the audience to please post your questions in the chat. We already have very nice questions. Now I will present the third and last speaker before the panel. It will be Dr. Stephanie Shan. So Stephanie received their PhD in biochemical engineering in 2014 and is currently an associated professor and head of department of chemical engineering at Curtin University in Malaysia. So for Omayra, this is quite late, I mean, within her time zone. Since 2014, she has been highly involved in science outreach activities, mainly targeting children and youth. And she has established the ACS International Student Chapter in Curtin, Malaysia in 2016, with the aim of advocating for chemistry and for educating and nurturing future chemistry by stimulating their young minds. She has secured several international grants for launching her outreach activities to high school children, and she has been also advising a student-led Smart World Sustainability Program on waste management to promote awareness on sustainability and responsibility against solid waste management. So with that, I am pleased to welcome Stephanie. So when you want, you can please go ahead.
Right, thanks, Jiao, for the introduction. Jiao, I'm not getting the control yet.
Well, I sent you the control. Maybe I can try again.
All right, can you see my screen right now? Okay.
Not yet, but I'll share. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Indeed, it's my honor to be invited by IYCN to present this talk. Are you seeing the slides?
No, not yet, not yet.
Oops, sorry. How about now?
Not yet. It might take a while.
Yeah. Sorry, audience, for that. It could be due to the time zone delay.
It always happens in live events.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not yet. So we are...
I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it, Stephanie. I think you're okay. And we've got comments coming through in the chat to say that they're showing up. So I'm not sure why you can't see them, but we're good.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks, Laurie. All right.
You're welcome.
So, right, a little bit about myself. Let's see. Okay, a little bit about myself. I'm serving in the Department of Chemical Engineering in Curtin University, Malaysia, and currently heading the department as well. As what Jiao has introduced, I'm an advisor for Curtin ACS International Student Chapter, and also an active committee in ACS Malaysia chapter. And a bit about my research, I focus a lot on bio-nanotechnology as well as bioprocessing engineering. Right. So myself, I'm a Malaysian Chinese. I grown up in West Malaysia. If you know about Malaysia, we have two parts of Malaysia, the west side as well as the east side. All right. So as a city girl, I've grown up in a city, and I've seen how well everyone is doing in the city. Right. However, starting from 2014, I started to reside in East Malaysia, which is the Borneo. All right. So let me give you some introductions on where is Borneo and where am I currently located, because that's where I started my passion in science outreach, right? So Sarawak is also named as the land of Hornbill. This is where I'm currently located. It is the largest state in Malaysia. It's about 124,000 square kilometer compared to Peninsula. So if you look at the percentage, it's about 90% of the size of the whole Peninsula Malaysia, which is the west side of the Malaysia. The population has about 2.81 million in 2019 as reported. However, there's about 46% of the population is living in a rural area. Okay, and if you know about Malaysia, we have diverse population, diverse races and ethnic group. Okay, in Sarawak itself, we have over 40 sub-ethnic groups, okay, with distinct language. They have different languages, culture, lifestyles, all right? So generally, there are 6 major groups in Sarawak. We have Chinese, we have Iban, Malay, Bidayu, Orang Ulu, Melanau, and others such as Indians, Eurasians, Bugis, Murut, and etc. So you can see that there's diverse there's a diversities, right? Especially in the land of Hornbills. So what is so special about that? We have mentioned about 46% of the population is living in a rural area. So if you look at the geographical location, 64% of Sarawak's total land is actually covered with primary and the secondary forests with rugged terrain. You can see that. And it's inaccessible. We do not have any paved road, and air transportation is the only means to connect the remote area. All right. So there's extensive network of navigable rivers, and that is the only means for connecting with the closer cities. All right. There are about 35 gazetted river. Okay, and the length itself is about 500 kilometers, and it's only about more than half of that is navigable. So there are a lot of places it's not easily reachable, okay? And the road network is relatively undeveloped in this area. Okay, so this is primarily why the passions that I have towards the underserved community in the land of Hornbill. A lot of students in this underserved area have limited exposure to science. If you can see, based on even the basic infrastructure is not available. So why not science, right? So it contains populations of students and even communities from minorities, as well as economical disadvantaged background. Okay, many of them are still coming from a very poor family. Okay, they're still living in poverty. So the aim is to help students to become more excited about science and interesting in it. Okay, so why is it so important to cultivate excitement in science for the students? It's particularly, I believe that education is the backbone for growth as well as development, and it definitely helps students to outgrow from poverty, and the knowledge that they have learned from science will definitely benefits them in their future. Okay, Rorin actually reported that even a short-term program are capable to develop students' interests, all right, towards science and allowing them to meet the role, okay, and develop positive attitudes toward it. So some of you may mention that outreach could be very short-term. How can this actually benefit to the students? But don't look down on this small outreach, perhaps a 2 to 3 days event or even a short program, but it definitely impacts the students, especially the students from the rural area. Okay, so Mahu actually reported the quality rural schools, how a rural school can be a quality ones to bring up the students in the rural area. All right, so he highlighted that we must employ high quality teachers, and the teachers are not necessarily qualified in terms of the certification, but also they must be passionate towards teaching students in science and technology, right? The teachers must be provided with adequate pay in order to keep them. A lot of good teachers actually resigned and went to private sectors, and this is quite a sad story. And must be led by the effective school leaders. Why I'm saying that is because a lot of school leaders that are being appointed, they know the difficulty in handling a rural school, in managing it. So a lot of good leaders actually left after appointment, right? So besides this, they should have been equipped with quality facilities. For example, basic buildings, ICT infrastructures, and good instructional supplies, right? Some even says that you should have a good consideration of classes, because you will get better attention in a smaller size class. Right, so in the rural school, there's no access to road, there's no paved road, there's limited and supply of clean water. These pictures actually is the pictures that have gone through an outreach in probably 3 to 4 years ago. We have to go through the boat ride, about an hour plus to reach the school, and you can see that there's no paved road to the school, right? We have to do some small hikes in order to reach the school, and the school has a very minimum facilities, okay? ICT facilities is very minimum. They do have a computer labs. However, the access to internet is very, very limited. I can still recall that I have to look for the signals to ensure that I can get my emails downloaded. There are efforts shown by the Malaysian Ministry of Education to provide facilities such as accommodations for students staying in a more remote area. All right. So that's actually very good. However, young students have to leave home for months to get education, and going into serving them, reaching out to them is actually a very touching. Okay, the students feel very touched when educators, young scientists came in to reach out to them. Yeah. So this is actually the general phenomena, okay, happening everywhere. We can see that the number of students enrolled or pursuing in STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, is going declining. All right, and there's shortage of women and minorities in this area as well. Well, this is actually a world phenomenon, okay? So that's very important for the developing country to continue science outreach, as well as for the underdeveloped country. Okay. So I'm bringing out this educational outreach model for you to see the domains that, and also the dimensions that we can look into. A lot of us may be focusing on K-12 students domain, where this is the students that we are reaching out to. Okay. However, there are other domains that we may be looking at in terms of attentions, like teachers domain, the higher educational domains, either in academics, technical, or even the non-STEM higher educational domains, and as well as the general communities. And when we look into a STEM outreach, we have to look in the dimensions as well. How are we going to reach out to different domains of a group of people, right? So today I'm not going to focus in different domains, but my focus over here will be on the students, the K-12 students domain, okay, especially on the rural area. Okay. So science outreach is a model of informal education. So it's usually run by the universities or industries or science-related NGOs. It's to promote science to the students, okay, to cultivate interest, to ensure that they have better engagement, right? So majority of this program is focused on science research by the researcher, because most of it is running by the university, and the scientists are coming out to reach out to the students. But the question here is that how effective it is to the rural school students. Do you think that the rural school students will get excited towards new invention? Probably yes, but it's the invention that you have bringing to the students will give them some impact in their daily life, or even to let them continuing their interest in science. So that's the questions that the volunteers, okay, has to think about when they design the science outreach program. All right, so bear in mind that there's difference between the city and rural students. I would say that the city students have better exposure towards science and technology, whereas the rural students, they focus on outdoor activities. So in order to create a successful science outreach model, we need to look into a different area. Okay, we have to have a collaboration between the different parties as well. For example, the principals, the scientists, the educators have to come together to design a proper outreach program to cater for the targeted group. Right, so I would say that outreach to the rural students requires several criteria. Number one, personal touch. We need to know that what is actually the needs of the students, understanding their interests, and lastly, we can provide proper guidance in terms of their development. So I've particularly quoted this principle, CARE principle, from Burt written in 2020. It says that to provide a caring and supportive environment for rural students, the instructor should make connections with students' life and personal interests in and out of the class. So it's not only planning out the program and to ensure that they are equipped with all those knowledges, but to make connections with the student, to understand their interests. That is very important. To be attentive to the students' need, to provide vigorous curriculum. So in our case, perhaps we will be creating the outreach program to promote the student learning, and lastly, to design expansive learning experience that challenge the rural students to encounter different viewpoints and stances. This is very, very important. Yeah. So science outreach to rural students is very different to them, since they have less exposure to ICT, to technologies. They feel that science is a magic. Okay, they can learn through the play, Okay, and I believe that these can actually help students to discover the curiosity. Okay, and I quoted from the psychologist shown in 1962, it says that the genetic epistemology or the developmental theory of knowledge is very important. Yeah. So the mindset. So this is very important because the mindset of the rural students are very, very different from those who are from the city. Okay, they are going to say that why do I need science? I'm going to inherit my family to be a farmers. I don't think science will help me. Okay, I'm not smart enough to be in a science class. Science is way far from my world. I'm too poor because usually the education in STEM, it's very, very expensive. It's too hard to understand. They're complicated. And of course, some of them may have a barrier in terms of the languages and things like that. So how can we cultivate interest? It's through simple science. So it's not very difficult when we reach out to rural students. Just have to create simple science experiments to cultivate the interest as well as to bring the curiosities of students in science. And these are some of the images you can see that we can run a small group demonstrations, and later on the students can perform it themselves and get excitement on the activities. Yeah. So I guess it's coming to an end. So some of you may well understand that this is actually joined by a lot of young scientists. So I would encourage you to be part of the outreach volunteers. This is a part of community building, and I believe that many of you who have gone through science outreach, you actually agree with me that volunteering in science outreach increase your self-confidence, advance your career. It could actually help you in advancing your career as well as bringing fulfillment in your life at the end. So I would say that I would encourage every one of you who are in who have passion, okay, to reaching out to any communities, any group of domains that you are targeted to, and do your best in reaching out to them. And lastly, I will acknowledge ACS Malaysia chapter in providing the funding for the outreach activity. The association that I'm affiliated to, the student chapter, as well as Curtin University Malaysia for the support. Right, so that's the end. Jiao, I hand over back to you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. I'm sorry for the inconvenience in beginning, for the stress in sharing the slide, but it was fine. Thank you very much for sharing all the insights and all the activities you have been involved in communicating science outreach towards rural schools and students. So we have reached now to the panel discussion, and we have got really very nice questions. We are a bit behind schedule, so we'll have around 20-25 minutes for the panel. So I will now please ask all the speakers to turn on their cameras. Just waiting for Stephanie. Okay, thank you very much. Again, thank you very much for all the talk, for all the advice, and for sharing our activities. It's really very important that we as scientists communicate science and be open to the general public. We have seen mainly, or this last year was very, I mean, we had really a huge effort from different governments in sharing and communicating well situation of the pandemic, and this is really important to put what we are doing in the lab in an easy way, so that the general public can understand what we are talking, and we can engage and inspire eventually future scientists, as well as help them through their careers. So we got some questions. Maybe the first one would be, what are the main challenges and resources behind organizing or planning such an outreach event? So it's quite different while we organize the event in full, or if just we I mean, contribute with our event. So can you please share what are the main challenges and resources you think that you need for organizing an event on science outreach? If any of you wants to start, please Maybe Omayra? You are muted. So
now, okay,
now,
now
yes.
it's not letting me unmute. Sorry about
Okay.
that. So the challenges of outreach is actually the fact that you're dealing with volunteers, right? Like maybe you're used to work in a place and they're paid to do certain things, and you know if you don't get it done, then you know you get in trouble or whatever. So volunteer recruitment, you know, is one big aspect of it. And what I've seen is that usually people are not very creative about how to find volunteers. Look in your community. You're going to find a lot of great people that are willing and want to help. So go to your local industry, local academia, lots of college students, and even in the industry, they have programs in place to help their employees connect to these opportunities. And my experience has been that once you get really good people, those people bring other people on board. And it's just like employment, right? Like you want good employees because then they're going to bring other people they know that are in a very good network. Challenges, of course, financial resources is one of them. And each community looks different when it comes to that. And there's also the big question, which is a common thing when it comes to the not-for-profit world. Are you going to go for private funding, or are you going to go for state funding or federal funding? And those come all with a different type of strings attached. So you want to be thoughtful about which one you're going to approach, because it may be a lot more work than it's worth. Okay, so that's something you want to keep in mind. Specifically in the case of my organization, we were pitching something that was very high risk, so we decided to go for private funding first. There are foundations in different organizations, private foundations, sometimes it's family foundations or community foundations, and there are different legal restrictions around each of them, but they have to give money, certain percentage, every year. So access those, because there are a lot of those small pockets, you may not be aware of them. So that's a way of getting access to resources of people that are usually invested in that specific community. Okay, so it's not just some federal, okay, we have a whole country to serve. No, in those communities, there are people that love the community and they want to invest specifically in that community. So I personally have found that to be very efficient and effective.
Yeah. Thank you, Omayra. So any other thoughts from you, Amanda or Stephanie? No? Okay, so maybe we move on. So we have really a lot of questions. So maybe the next one, so you already mentioned in all your talks that I mean, we have to know our target audience and explain well what the message, our main message, in a simple way so that the public can understand. What is your advice on how to convey our excitement and passion for science with general public? I'm talking mainly about non-scientists and children, and how to spark their interest and keep the audience engaged. So maybe Amanda?
Thank you. It wouldn't let me. Yeah, so how to convey the excitement. The first thing I thought of is that if you are excited about it, and if you choose to do something you're actually excited about, then it will show. It reminds me of what Dr. Omayra said about I don't care about the electron moving around, like I care about this. So if you choose things that you actually care about, and you know, it can be challenging to find those things and to know when to say yes and no. But then, you know, when you're actually out there, I think you have to practice a lot. I think as a scientist, if you're the scientist doing the outreach, you can get really bogged down and focused on the details. You can kind of get a bit of tunnel vision about what is going on, because you're such an expert in it, and you have to step back multiple times. And I find it's really helpful to talk with like my family or like my extended family over the holidays, where I try and tell them what I'm doing. For example, when I was doing my PhD in organic chemistry, and my sister's father-in-law, I just remember him saying, okay, but why? Like, why are you doing that? And just trying to break it down and really explain like why we're doing what we're doing. And then they can kind of share the excitement, and then you can build on that. But it's remembering that not everyone cares about all the little details you do, I think.
Thank you, Amanda. So eventually, Stephanie, I don't know if you want to comment as well. Yeah, you are able.
Thanks. Yeah, I totally agree with Amanda. So when we have the passions and we try to talk it to the people around us, we kind of able to influence them, right? However, we can't control how many percent that they can receive from us, which is the rich part, you see. But I have more experience in reaching out to the primary students. So I guess for primary students, they are more interested. It's easier to get the assignment when we put it into a play form, in which they get hands-on experience in touching out those experiments. See, so I guess it's more about the target group that you are reaching out to. Of course, if you're talking to adults, your colleagues, the peers, even general primary, you will have a different opportunity. For school students, going into the class, standing in front of them, giving that public lecture, of course, it won't be creating an excitement. Yeah. So yeah, that's my opinion on that.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So maybe Omayra, maybe I can also, you can comment on this, but maybe also on the next one, because we have one that is specifically targeting you or through your talk that is coming from Igor Cunha. So he asked, when it comes to knowing the community, what are some strategies your organization uses to learn about them and still be respectful to their background? How do you break the social barrier between high education individuals and the communities they are trying to help?
Great question. I just want to wrap up on what was said before. Remember these. So what? Whenever you're communicating with anyone, know who you're talking to, and make sure you start with the so what. Then you'll be able to get to the next step. So to the question, Joao, I transitioned from being a senior scientist with patents and this and that, and I was very comfortable in my space. I knew what I had to do. I knew the people knew me. And all of a sudden, going that transition from corporate America into the community, my degrees did not matter. Who I am, where I went to school did not matter. So something that people have to learn is, first of all, you have to humble yourself. And the reality of the matter is, no, you don't have all the answers, and no, you don't know everything. So that's the first step. Again, doesn't matter how smart you are. So I had to start from zero, from scratch. I was not going to come to the community as, I'm Dr. Padilla De Jesús. It's like, nope, wrong start. Nope. So the first thing that I started doing, along with actually the funders who help initiate this organization, we started creating meetings with well-experienced community leaders that had been working with the community for years. And literally, it was like what we would call in GE. It was almost like a red team. What is a red team? The red team stood for, when we were writing big grants for the government, we would create a red team. Red meaning blood, because it was shedding blood in that meeting. Okay, so the purpose of that meeting was to poke in every possible place about the things that could go wrong, but it would prep you. Okay, so we created kind of like the red team of that, but for the community. We're not afraid of being told that our ideas are stupid or this or that. But why did we want that? Because we wanted to be aware ahead of time of the potential issues, problems, risks that we were going to be facing. That put us in a better position to plan for that. Okay, so when you are open to listen to risks, don't take that as, oh, I can't do it because X, Y, and Z. It is no, okay, then what can I do to get around that, to make sure that I have a higher chance of success? So we talk with amazing people. We express our ideas, how we were planning. They brought up great points, and we were better prepared to do so. And start meeting the people. I don't know how many coffee shop meetings I had, not knowing where they were headed. You don't need to know the end goal of something every time. You don't need to show up to every meeting with an agenda of this is exactly what we're going to get. No, because you're blocking yourself from the creative process of identifying opportunities. So have lots of meetings, talk to a lot of people, because things will happen. I remember back in the research world, the best projects were created in the cafeteria. How did that happen? Were people planning to go to the cafeteria to talk about the specific project with an agenda? No, they were just eating pizza, drinking soda, and sharing with each other what they were working on. And they were just brainstorming. So do a lot of that. Do a lot of that. Let's be less restrictive. Talk to as many people as you can, and things will go from there.
Thank you very much, Omayra. So we have, as I told, we have really a lot of questions. So we are more or less 10, 15 minutes to about to end the webinar. So I would like just to address a few more questions, and I would try to ask you for a very quick answers if possible, so that we can address as much as possible. So one of the following questions is the following from Nimrich. I'm sorry if I didn't spell it correctly. I was wondering how you think it is possible to combine outreach with research. To me, it sounds like you are mainly focusing on the outreach. Do you think it is possible to be successful in both sides, so in outreach and science? So.
I'm not sure I understood the question. Is it possible to be successful both as a scientist and in outreach? Is that the actual question?
Yeah.
So here's the thing you need to understand. How are you defining being a scientist or a career in itself? Are you seeing that as a static thing, an end goal? I became a scientist and that's the end of my life and it doesn't evolve anymore? No, when you're involved in outreach, you're morphing yourself into something completely new. So if you're seeing that as a static thing, no, you cannot keep just growing in this space as much as you can and also in this space. You're going to morph into something completely new. And because it's something completely new doesn't mean it's lesser or worse. It's just something different. So it depends on how you define the kind of path and what you're defining as career, or what are you defining as your end goal in life. So that's, I think.
Yeah, I would say that I agree totally that doing outreach, I'm sure, makes people better researchers, because it constantly pushes your boundaries of thinking about science and what's the purpose of science and what do you want to do, and it can change the direction. And I'll also point out that there is, I mean, for someone like me, they're not two distinct things. You can do research about outreach, and Dr. Chan had a lot of great outreach science in her presentation.
So thank you very much. So we have just a few more questions. One it's asking, it's from Lily Rains. So how do you handle chemists volunteers who want to help but have problematic attitudes? And I think she's referring to when they are talking down to participants and teachers. So if you can like very quickly address, like 30 seconds.
I want to say something very quickly. I mentioned our approach of connecting educators with the experts in the field. From my experience in the corporate world, something that I learned is that diversity of background is extremely powerful. You have to remove the silos. When you remove those silos, what you get, the product, is amazing. And that's what I drive in my organization. Every time I get an educator say, oh, they don't know anything about this, I say, I stop it right there. I do not entertain that thought. they're really good and they bring something that you cannot bring, and vice versa. If something someone says, oh, but they don't understand that, oh, stop it right there. So as a leader myself, I don't want to entertain or nurture any of that culture, because what I know for a fact is that when you combine everyone's strengths, the product that you get is something that cannot compare with anything else. So yeah, we have to work on those attitudes.
Yeah, I agree with Omayra on her point. In most of my case, I deal with students volunteers, and I do have very egoistic student volunteers, and they give very stern instructions to others. So I guess that's also a role of an advisor on how to bring the situation down. Of course, I'm not working with scientists where, you know, it's easier to communicate with them. Sometimes students requires more understanding. Okay, why are they bringing out this? So what I will do is I'll pull them aside to have a personal talk with them, and then bring it up to the team to have a more harmonious discussion.
So thank you. So maybe just one or two more questions. One, I think it's very, I guess, also important during this time is that have you been involved or organizing a science outreach during the pandemic? So over the last year, if so, what were the challenges that you encountered? How you adapt to the virtual environment while keeping the participants excited and engaged? So maybe Amanda, I don't know if maybe, or Omayra, yeah. As you wish, yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so our program, the model of it is very much designed around in person. It's very hands-on, especially with the community that we have. We have a very diverse group of students that learn differently, and some of them can be really successful, but if they're guided. So when COVID happened, remember how I mentioned the trust and the relationship building? If we decided to stop altogether, that was going to be lost. That was work that took years on building, and we did not want to do that. So we forced ourselves to go on virtual. But how do we do that? It took a lot of planning, a lot of learning. The learning curve was ridiculous, but we did it. But here was the main challenge: access to the technology. So our organization had a number of computers, and we did something that we had never considered doing, and we had said to ourselves before, we're never going to do this. This is going to stay with us. We started checking on everyone and knowing what kind of devices they had. Did they have internet or not? Did they have the device that would allow them to connect to the platform that we have put in place? We have 21 computers right now. 17 of them are in the students' houses. But that's how we got them to be able to connect. In fact, right after this meeting, I have to go to Schenectady because of a new student that is starting to connect, and he doesn't have a computer. We're bringing him a computer. Then you have to think of those logistics. But we kept the communication, we kept the trust, the relationship, and but we're providing the technology also.
Thank you, Omayra. Amanda, do you want to comment? Or?
I agree 100% with that. And I mean, some campaigns or some outreach efforts are kind of well designed for, like Twitter campaigns or online letter writing or sending out emails, but you really can't make any assumptions. I think that's what the pandemic has taught us. It's not outreach, but for my course, I had to do a survey of students to see, like, what technology do you have? What do you need? And a lot of them were really scared because they didn't have like a working webcam, and they thought it would be required for their exam. And yeah, I guess just really, you can't make any assumptions about the technology people have. Again, like, your audience isn't homogenous, and you should really think about, like, am I really reaching everyone and getting the message to them?
So thank you. So I think we can have eventually the two last questions. One is from Bridget from Malaysia. How to build an outreach program at an international level? Is that possible? I ask please for very quick answers if you want to comment. So do you think it is possible to build a program at international level?
I will answer quickly here. Is it possible? Yes, but the first question you should be asking yourself, Is it because you just want to go international? Or think first about what it is that you want to achieve. What's your end goal? And once you define that, then ask yourself, does it make sense that it's international? So in my case, as you saw, I'm very focused in a community that we knew had barriers and they were not having access. And my goal was to remove those barriers and provide equitable access. So in my case right now, I'm in a very specific community that had nothing. Now, my hope is that that model can be reproduced in other places. Yes, but there's so much learning to be done that you want to start small and go from there.
So thank you. And maybe for the final question, do you have any final advice that you would like to share with those that want to initiate or enhance their participation in science outreach events? So really very quick question, very quick answer, please. Maybe Stephanie, maybe if you want to start.
Arja, I'm not sure if I get your questions correctly. How do we create visions?
Any final advice, I mean, on that you would like to share to those that want to initiate or their participation in science outreach? How can they start?
Yeah, I would say a student, I mean, because for my side, I have a lot of student volunteers. I would say a student ambassador is very important. They play a very important role in getting the recruits, when they share the experience, how they're reaching out to the students, is actually a very valuable tricks in getting more volunteers. The experience they have, what is their viewpoint about outreach and how they perform it. Yes, throwing some videos out to the publics will actually attract attention. So I would say that's the best option for in my case, yeah.
Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah, I think, just start looking in your local community for what things are available. Maybe some like cities and universities and high schools, all types of things running outreach programs. And then, just start to try things out and you'll learn the types of outreach that you enjoy and maybe things you don't like as much. I did end up getting a lot of answers to the survey, and there's a lot of people interested in, which one was this? The education and training and reaching the general public and adolescents. So just go try things out, but then don't feel like you need to stick with it if you're not enjoying it.
Okay, Omayra, maybe really quick if possible.
Yeah, watch for the lenses that you're wearing in your effort of trying to understand what's right for a given community. You need to put yourself in their shoes, and you gotta be willing to listen. You gotta be willing to learn so that you can be more effective, because your reality is not their reality. And if you're trying to impose your reality on the way you do things, trying to solve their issues or what you think their issues are, you're very off target.
Thank you very much for this very engaging panel discussion. So I will just show my slides to show just the final part. I hope you can see them. So this was the fourth event of the series on professional development skills. It will be uploaded to IUPAC YouTube channel. You can see all of the previous events in there as they are shown here. We'll have next month one event on science writing and publishing. Stay tuned. And we are also running a platform that is the Project ChemVoice, a partnership between IUPAC and IYCN, in which we want to discuss each relevant early career chemists in monthly webinars. And you can also check at IUPAC YouTube channel the events that we have currently organized and the ones that will come soon. So just to end up, I would like to thank very much all the speakers for kindly being present in this event, as well as all the attendees for taking part. Thank you very much. Stay safe and see you soon.